Hello everyone, and welcome to the South Carolina State House. My name is Michael, and it's my job to tell you about the State House here in Columbia, South Carolina. First things first, does anyone know where South Carolina state laws are made? If you guessed the State House, you're right. This is where major lawmaking decisions are made. Everything from taxes, to education, to transportation infrastructure, and much more. Now you're probably wondering who makes all of these laws, and if people like you and I have a say. Well, the South Carolina legislature is made up of two groups, elected by the citizens of the state, the Senate and the House of Representatives. And together they form the General Assembly, which is responsible for upholding the lawmaking process. But anyone can suggest a potential law. You just need support from a member of the General Assembly. Here's how it works. A suggested law is called a bill. And when a bill is proposed to either the Senate or the House of Representatives, both groups have to fully support the bill before it can become a law. A bill could go through countless revisions or none at all. But once a majority in each body is in agreement, it's passed on to the governor for his or her signature. And with today's technology, you can watch the lawmaking process from your phone or computer. That's right, you can get an inside look at how the State House operates anytime you want. Speaking of inside looks, before I show you around the inside of the State House, let's take a look at the grounds. This is the grand entrance to the State House grounds, and what a view. This is the heart of downtown Columbia and what's called the Capitol Complex. The Capitol Complex is an area of land and buildings bound by Gervais Street, Sumter Street, Pendleton Street, Assembly Street, and of course, the State House. And on the State House grounds, you'll find more than 25 monuments and memorials, each one with a different story to tell. For example, the memorial statue of Senator Strom Thurmond honors the man who served the state as an elected official for more than 60 years. As a governor and U.S. Senator, Thurmond was known for legendary devotion to his state and constituents. Thurmond was the first U.S. Senator to be elected by a write-in campaign and holds the record for the longest filibuster in U.S. history. Another important monument is one dedicated to African American history in South Carolina. Unveiled in 2001, this statue celebrates the accomplishments of African Americans in the Palmetto State, so it holds an important place on the State House grounds. The oldest monument is the Palmetto Tree, honoring the Palmetto Regiment, which fought in the Mexican War in 1847. Other monuments represent South Carolina's Revolutionary War generals and soldiers of the Spanish-American War and the Civil War. Now let's take a look at the State House itself. It was set to open its doors in the mid-1860s. But construction was halted during the Civil War and further delayed when General Sherman and his Union troops marched through South Carolina in 1865. Blasting the State House with cannon fire, the Union Army captured Columbia. Today, 6 bronze stars are affixed on the outside walls, marking where 6 cannonballs struck the building during the attack. As visitors climb the 52 steps up to the entrance, they can admire 22 impressive Corinthian granite columns. They are some of the largest monolithic columns in the United States, which is just a fancy way of saying each column was carved from a single piece of granite. And if you look up, you'll see the copper dome made out of nearly 44,000 pounds of copper. That's equivalent to the copper it would take to make almost 8 million pennies. Now that you got a good look at the grounds, it's time to head inside. But first, here's a little history lesson. The story of the State House begins on the coast of South Carolina, in the port town of Colonial Charleston. In the 1750s, before South Carolina was made a state, there was a building that served as the home of the colonial government. But as new settlers began to move farther inland from the Atlantic, Charleston became too far to travel. So they developed a plan to move inward toward the center of the state. They called the new capital Columbia. Columbia's first version of the State House was a wooden structure, and state officials feared it as a potential fire hazard. And they were right. A wooden building was hardly a safe place to store important documents and public records. As fate would have it, shortly after the records were removed and construction began on the new State House, a fire destroyed the original wooden building. In 1854, the state hired a new architect by the name of John R. Nearnsey to oversee the construction of the new fireproof State House. His original drawings resemble the current State House you see today. But things were about to get a lot more complicated in South Carolina. 6 years later, Abraham Lincoln was elected president of the United States. South Carolina's opposition to President Lincoln's stance on slavery, along with other issues, resulted in the state seceding from the Union. Disruptions brought on by the war caused construction on the State House to be put on hold, as the workers, a number of which were enslaved African Americans, were released from work on the State House. The Civil War ended in 1865, but it left the state of South Carolina in poverty. With little money to finish the State House, a temporary roof was placed on the building to prevent further damage. For decades, very little was done to complete construction, but by 1907, the building was finally finished. That wasn't the last time the State House would see a renovation. In 1995, an almost $50 million renovation brought the State House to the beautiful condition you see today. Now let's see what's behind a few of the doors in the State House and explore the rooms. Here we are in the upstairs main lobby. If you look up, you'll see the interior dome that forms the centerpiece of the ceiling. This is not the dome you see from the outside. This one is simply for decoration. This entrance leads to the Joint Legislative Conference Room. Each of the 3 doors is made from Tennessee dark cedar marble, mahogany, and very rare pieces of stained glass. Speaking of stained glass, the mosaic overlooking the main lobby shows the front of the state seal of South Carolina, and it was made with approximately 37,000 pieces of glass. If you head toward the east side of the main lobby, you'll find the Senate chambers. This is where South Carolina's Senate discusses whether or not to turn proposed bills into laws. Just like we talked about earlier, the voting is still done by a traditional voice vote of aye or no. To begin each session, the Sergeant at Arms brings in the state sword and places it in the desk rack. That turns on the lamps on each side of the desk and signifies that the Senate is in session. Lord Halifax, a former British ambassador to the United States, gave the sword to the state in 1951. It was crafted by the Wilkinson Sword Company and engraved with the state seal and the state flower, the yellow jessamine. If you look at the Senate desk, you'll see it's handmade out of British Honduran mahogany and features the state seal and a clock, which was crafted for the sum of $3,000. Pretty good investment since it's now valued at more than $500,000. On the west side of the main lobby, you'll find the House chamber, made up of 124 representatives. House members vote electronically from their personal desks located on the chamber floor. Similar to the Senate's use of the state sword, the symbol of authority in the House of Representatives is the state mace. If you don't know what a mace is, take a good look. Made in 1756 of silver and gold, the South Carolina state mace is approximately 4 feet long and weighs almost 11 pounds. It was manufactured in England by a female silversmith named Magdalene Feline and was purchased for the cost of 90 guineas. Also a pretty good investment because it is now appraised as being priceless. It is also the oldest mace in use by a legislative body in the United States. And at the beginning of each session, the House Sergeant at Arms places it in the desk rack. That turns on the lamps on each side of the desk and signifies that the House is in session. Head down the twin iron staircases from the main lobby and you'll find the lower lobby. The ceiling arches were handcrafted from red clay bricks, and the checkerboard floor is made out of white and pink marble. On the east side of the lower lobby is the Lieutenant Governor's office. And on the west side is one of the most important rooms here, the Governor of South Carolina's office. In 2011, South Carolina made history when residents elected Nikki Haley, the state's first female governor. Now that you have a pretty good idea of the interior, I'm going to show you some of the artwork on display inside the State House. Throughout the State House, you'll find portraits, paintings, and sculptures, and more than 50 works of art honoring the people and events that have shaped this great state. This piece by William Ranney is of the Battle of Cowpens during the Revolutionary War, and it is one of the few paintings of the Revolution that features an African-American soldier in combat. It is believed that this unnamed soldier is credited with saving the life of Lieutenant Colonel William Washington. Many of the portraits throughout the State House honor former presidents, governors, legislators, and also state citizens who have dedicated themselves to bettering South Carolina and the nation. One example is Mary McLeod Bethune, an educator, activist, administrator, and native South Carolinian. She left quite a mark on state and national politics. She founded what is now Bethune-Cookman College, worked under 3 presidents in the 1930s and 40s, and became the first African-American woman to serve as head of a federal agency, the National Youth Administration. Here's a portrait of John C. Calhoun, one of our most famous South Carolinians. In addition to serving as a U.S. Senator and Congressman, he was Secretary of War and Secretary of State, and served as the Vice President of the United States for 2 different presidents. Impressive to say the least. Charleston native James F. Burns is one of the few people to hold high office in all 3 branches of the federal government: the executive branch, legislative branch, and judicial branch. Longtime leader of the NAACP and civil rights champion Isaiah DeQuincy Newman was the first African-American state senator elected in South Carolina since the late 1880s, paving the way for all those that followed thereafter.
And there's much more where that came from. So make sure you check out all of the artwork throughout the tour so you really get a sense of the history and people of South Carolina.
Now that you've seen the outside, the inside, and the artwork, and learned about how the State House operates, there's only one thing left to do.
Go see it for yourself.
For more information about the South Carolina State House, guided tour information, the State House gift shop, and hours of operation, or to contact your local legislator, please visit scstatehouse.gov or call 803-734-2430. Thanks for watching.